same island as on the other side. But so welcome aboard real quickly before we get going any too distance. The Coast Guard likes to let you know where the life vests are. In the back, you'll see clear boxes with the yellow tops. That's where the life vests are for back there. Folks up front, I'm really sorry, you're kind of out of luck. No, I'm just joking. The black box with the red top, that's where the life vests are located. Okay? We won't have a problem. It is stunning out here. It really is a beautiful day. It's kind of funny because October rolls around and it's sort of the end of our season. As we travel around here, you can see about 100 homes. Every single house you see is only a summer home. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Our family moved off the island just a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot of families that are slowly but surely moving off. Once October hits, it gets really, really cold, very weather kind of comes in, it gets windy, and they also shut the water off. And so at one point in time, any of the islands that do have running water, they get shut off, and so it's very difficult to kind of survive out here without that. So has anyone done this tour before? Wait, you guys are all new? Oh, we had a hand go up. So somebody's done this tour before. I like to ask that ahead of time because sometimes it's really a lot of fun for me to sort of make up different facts. I like to start the tour often where the islands came from. So these islands are reported stone by stone back in the 1800s. There's dead silence. Okay. Now I'll keep to the real script of truth. If you hear anything you don't believe, well, talk to Brian about that. He likes to bend the truth as much as possible. So the islands were first charted in 1614 by a man named Adrian Block. Hopefully you've heard of Block Island before. It's named after him. He was a Dutch explorer. His job was basically to chart the entire New England coastline. So he comes in from the East River, which is way off in that direction to our right-hand side. He moves along the coast through the Thimble Islands, and then he points his boat outward, almost like where I'm going right now. Obviously not right directly into an island, but kind of around through that. The Atlantic Ocean is straight ahead from us, the opening. So all to your right-hand side, way off in the distance, even though you can't see it, that is all Long Island, about 18 to 20 miles away off of that distance, okay? To our left-hand side is all the shoreline of Connecticut, and we're kind of past now. Now, so Captain Block first put the islands on the charts as the 100 Islands, and it's many years before it's known as the Thimble Islands, renamed because of the berries that grew wild all over the shores of these little rocks. I would guess I was, 14, 15 years old before I figured out what the heck a thimbleberry is. Turns out it's sort of like an offshoot of a wild black raspberry. It's called a thimbleberry because the fruit is large enough to stick on your finger like a sewing thimble, hence the thimbleberry. Now, as we travel around through the thimbles, you're going to see about 100 homes, as I had mentioned earlier. Now, just to keep in mind, only 50 of these homes have running water from shore, 50 do not. And there's 11 total homes, 7 islands, that have electricity. The rest of us are without electricity. And so we grew up with a very, very kind of different lifestyle than you would expect. And remember, it's only the summertime. This island to the right-hand side, this one is called Wheeler's Island. Back in 1856, a man named Frank Wheeler comes out. He purchases this island. He puts up a house. He and his family live here, and they love it for many, many generations. Eventually, they do have to sell. In 1998, they sell. Now, the whole time they're here, even though they are by far the closest of all the Thimble Islands to shore, they never bring over electricity, they never bring over water, feeling like it's going to change the way they experience their summertime. So in 98, when the new family purchased the house, first thing they did, electricity and water. Second thing they did is they tore the home down. This is not an original. It is, however, as original as possible in that they find the plans from 1856 and they recreate the home according to the plans. So this is identical to the one that was there before, with the exception of that little cupola, that little glass room up top. That was part of the plans originally, but it was never done during the first iteration. So some folks call this island home more original than the original. Now the original home did fall into quite a bit of disrepair back in the 1940s, started to be known as a ghost house to the locals. And so if you look at it, imagine sagging porches and broken glass and missing shingles and such. It does have sort of a creepy look to it, doesn't it? Now, the Wheelers family, they hear people calling it that disparagingly. Oh, it's a ghost house, it's falling down. And Mr. Wheeler at the time, he was kind of a jokester. He decides to play a trick on the locals. And what he does is he waits for a very, very dark and still night. He dresses from head to toe in black, and he lights one single lantern, which then ties around his waist with a big rope, and he wanders out of the porch. Now, if you've ever been in the water at night, sound travels really, really well. He knows this. He pulls out his violin and starts playing creepy violin music. The music drifts across the water. People from shore, they can hear it. They look up to see where it's coming from, and they just see that disembodied light floating on all the porches. Kind of cemented the idea of it being a ghost house. Oh my. Oh, different bird. the stonework, you can kind of see that we're going past on our left-hand side, all underneath the Wheeler's home, all down the shoreline. You can pretty much everywhere you look, you see this pink granite. You guys notice that? That stuff is called Stony Creek granite. It's a very, very famous stone. It comes from this tiny little town. So Stony Creek, which you were just in, it's a subsection of Brantford, and it's probably maybe 3 square miles is all. And this whole area is pockmarked with littered with old granite quarries. At one point in time, there were 9 active quarries in the area. And the stone that gets pulled out of here back in the 1800s gets sent all over the eastern seaboard, used in a wide variety of kind of cool places. Things like the steps to the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. come from here. If you go to Soldiers Monument in West Point, that giant obelisk also. Grand Central Station in New York City, the entire building, I know it looks like it's brownstone, it's just really, really dirty. South Station in Boston, the Brooklyn Bridge, those giant pilings. Even the footstones for the GW. Literally the list goes on and on and on. The one that I personally think is kind of the coolest, however, is the pedestal that the Statue of Liberty stands on is made entirely out of Stony Creek granite. And a lot of it comes off that island off the distance. You can see, we're going to go past it towards the end. It's called Rogers Island, one with a pinkish roof to it. Now, as we look through the island, you'll notice that they're sort of have that pinkish peach look to them. They're here because basically about 50,000 years ago, there was a big glacier kind of grinding its way through this area. It was called the Wisconsin Glacier. And it would rip across the crust. Now, the granite itself is an igneous stone. This whole area was going to be a super volcano. This big magma plume, this big thing of, it would have been lava. It never quite pops through the surface. And so it just sits underground. And it slowly but surely cools off, making the granite that we see around us today. Now, the granite is much harder than other rocks. And so as the glacier grinds away at the crust, it's able to tear away the softer materials, and it exposes the harder granite. And so that's really what the islands are, just bumps of this granite that get exposed by that Wisconsin glacier. Eventually, all the softer stuff that gets ripped out of here makes a giant pile out in that direction, and that big pile is what we now call Long Island. It is the terminal glacier, a terminal moraine for the glacier, the Wisconsin Glacier. By the way, it took me a lot of years not to be insulting to Long Islanders when I said that. We're kind of going through some cool boats. You can see this boat on the right-hand side. This one is called the Double Eagle. Originally, it was a sardine vessel, but it's been reclaimed and been re-equipped by some local fishermen, and oystermen specifically, and he's turned it into an oyster boat. So this whole area all around us is all mud flats, and they're active oyster beds. Basically, they were reclaimed until about 1940. The islands were known for these amazing oysters, but then it started getting too polluted, so basically it kind of dried up, and then some folks have decided to reseed it, so they're actually rebuilding all the beds underneath us, and so it's an active place, and we can start to get the Thimble Island oyster again. I saw it the other day at Max's up in West Preston. I don't know if you guys ever go there. Delicious, so good. Monday nights, $1 oysters. Oh yeah, can't argue with that. Straight ahead, this island is called Cuttin 2. You've got Cuttin 2 West on the right with a big blue house, Cuttin 2 East on the left-hand side, and the bridge between. Now, one of the historical events that happened here in the Thimble Islands occurred right about the tide we were at right now. So we are just about at high tide. We're down maybe 15, 20 minutes from high tide. And unfortunately, back in 1938, there was a really, really big hurricane that came through, and it hit right now. September 21st, 1938. As it comes in, it pushes ahead of it what's called a storm surge, which is like a big bubble of water makes your tide go up. Here in the Thimble Islands, our storm surge was 10 feet above where we are right now. You had wind and waves on top of that. It was absolutely devastating. 11 homes washed entirely away in the Thimble Islands, and 7 people lose their lives. Now, Cuttin 2 Island does well. The only thing they lose is the bridge between the two halves. That bridge is pretty new. It's about 17 years old, and it's right next to that blue house, which is actually only about 20 years old. A lot of people ask me, why does it take so long to rebuild the bridge? Turns out the families on either side, they didn't really like each other that much, so they just never rebuilt the bridge. Eventually, both halves are purchased by one family. There's one family that came out here and actually went on kind of a buying spree. They bought up 10 different islands. And when they did that, they renovated all the islands. And so the house to our stern, to our rear, that big blue one, that one's about 20 years old. They built that house. Now, after they built it, they decided they want to bring electricity to it. So back in 1978, any island could have gotten electricity, and only a couple do. So this half gets electricity, the other half doesn't. And so they want to bring electricity from this island they own to their other island. The only problem is that DEP won't allow that anymore. No more cables can go underwater. So they rebuilt the bridge. and they use that bridge as a conduit. They run electricity underneath it from one side to the other, so now both paths have electricity. Kind of an expensive way to do it, but apparently they had a pretty big checkbook. This little end section was just built, so you can see that one stone kind of in the middle where the chairs are. The next time if you come on this tour, you're going to see a cannon there. The guy who now owns this island, basically that family that bought up the 10 islands, they've sold them all off, and so they've been bought by other people. The guy who bought this island, he's just had a cannon built for this one little piece of granite that kind of sticks up there. It's a little deck with a fire pit in there. So we'll see what happens next time we come around, if he's going to shoot at us or not. This guy's, he's a friend of mine. He also has just told me just recently he's going to try to make it through the winter. I said earlier no one stays here in the wintertime. He's going to try to do it. And so you can see this chicken coop that was put up, this new chicken coop. He just brought that out about a month ago, and the chickens moved in a couple weeks ago. He basically is going to use that as his, his backup for food in case he gets stuck out here. You know, he can have fresh eggs, but more importantly, if he gets really desperate, he can have the chickens. And so if you come on the tour next year, you might hear about this guy, this really intrepid young man, made his way through the winter, braved it. Or you can hear about a crazy guy who had to eat all his chicken by December and got airlifted up. So we'll see what happens. The house all the way down on Cutton 2, you can see where that flag is flying, hidden behind that reddish tree. That is the original home on Cutton 2 West. It is a Sears and Roebuck mail order catalog home from 1927. Survived right in place, didn't wash away. This little house to our right-hand side, the white one, this one is called Dogfish Reef. It's one of our 2 man-made islands out here in the Islands. This home was here, I shouldn't say this home, a home was here back in 1938, and unfortunately so was the owner when the storm hit. And so if you look at our tide level and you count up 10 feet, you can see the whole house is awash. And the guy gets very concerned that he's going to wash away as waves are crashing through there. He goes up to the 2nd floor, and even then the house is shuddering with every subsequent wave. And so he makes his way out the window into an elm tree that was right next to the house, climbs into it, lashes himself with a big rope to the trunk of the tree, feeling like the tree has a better shot of surviving the storm than the house. And it turns out he's right. He weathers the storm in the tree, and he watches that house wash right off its foundation. He survives and is able to rebuild. Yeah, it's an elm tree, so the elm trees die off. Yeah, the elm blight killed it. Island to our left-hand side, this one's called Davis Island. It's one of our 2 fancy islands. There's 3 homes on this, all owned by the same family. You can see they've done this nice little dock work. They're in the middle of rebuilding all their piers. And that is freshly quarried Stony Creek granite right there that you see those blocks are. Now, up on the hill behind that incredible oak tree, this is the Taft administration's summer White House. And so for 2 consecutive summers, President Taft comes out to this home on his summer vacation. First year he comes down here was a friend of his that owned the island. He has the most amazing summer of his administration because, well, there was no way to get in touch with him. There was no phone service. So he's able to completely unplug. Anytime they had to get a really urgent message, the messenger had to row out here, hand deliver the message, wait for a response, and then row all the way back in. So it cuts down all the riffraff type stuff. And so he has a most amazing week. Comes out the next year expecting the same type of situation, but unbeknownst to him, the powers that be in the off-season, they drag their phone cable out here through the Thimble Islands. First one run right to Davis Island. So he arrives and finds the phone right in the front foyer. Never came back after that summer. The family that owns it, you can see they've done a nice job. They've got what's called an all-sports court there in the corner. Play any type of sport you want. They've got a playground next to it for the grandkids. The part you can't see it is on the backside of this island, they poured into the cliff face a full-size poured cement swimming pool. Think of the logistics of that, getting that all out on the island and poured into cliff face. Just really amazing. They're very environmentally friendly, really kind of cool, understated people. They drilled 7 geothermal wells all over the island to bring geothermal heating and cooling to the 3 homes, and then they put a big solar array. They are attached to shore for power, but it's said that they produce more electricity than they use each year. Island to our left-hand side that has nothing but a whole bunch of birds on it. This one's called Hen Island. Those birds on the end are the black ones. We've got a variety. Right up in the middle in the center, you can see that white bird. That's an American egret. And then you've got close to the water, if you keep on going down, that's a great blue heron. And then you've got the gaggle or the pack or the murder, I don't know what you call them, cormorants there. Those are diving birds. They spend 2-3 minutes underwater at a time. Right now they're all on the water, kind of drying off. And if you look on the other rock next to it, you can see one of his arms, his wings outspread, kind of like our hats are. What he's doing is just literally drip drying. That's all he's doing. Their wings don't really produce that much oil because they want to be able to slide through the water a little bit better, and they have very dense bones, and so they don't fly very well. So then they come out of the water, they just dry as much as they possibly can, so that if they have to, they can fly away. Now the islands are kind of known for their bird populations. We have what's called the roseate tern here. They're endangered animals, and they nest here in the Thimble Islands. And also you can see that island way off in the distance. That is called Faulkner's Island. The entire island is devoted just to the roseate terns. Terns are they're kind of cute. They've actually migrated since the season is ending up. They migrated down south, but they're super cute. They're dip feeders, and the reason that they're going endangered is because they skim across the surface and then take the little fish off the top. And as the temperatures are getting hotter and hotter, those fish are going a little lower and lower to stay a little cooler, so the birds can't quite get to them. Island on our right-hand side, this one's called Money Island. It's named after the money plant that grows wild here. Now, this used to be kind of the center of a tourism industry that was really prominent in the turn of the century. So in 1900, this island boasted 2 hotels on it. They had a bowling alley, a dance hall, a general store, a chapel, 2 saloons, pretty much anything you wanted was here. Now, unfortunately, with the Great Depression and then the subsequent the hurricane of 1938, it pretty much wiped out all the tourism, and the place depreciated immensely. And so most of the families that they bought back in the 40s, like my parents did, for nothing. Pretty much these houses went for absolutely nothing. And so the families that live here today are really normal, average, modest means, which is kind of neat. Now, this is really a lot of fun. The island does not have any running water. It doesn't have any fish, I should say. We do have on here fire hydrants for firefighting. They arrived in 1984. Until that time, we had to rely on rainwater. So we all have these big tanks underneath our house. Now what we do is we use the fire hydrants to fill those tanks up with fresh water. So we have access to as much fresh water as we want. You can see this area when it gets a little lower. It's a big point that comes out. You can see the diving board that's just above the water here, and then you got the swim float. Keep on going to the left. You see that big rock that has a diving board on top of it. That's called the high dive. Just a lot of fun. There's basically when I stay here, there's just basically a pack of feral children that run wild all over the island. That's the way the summer is basically set up. The kids just run into one house, eat everything in sight, move on to the next house. They run down to the water. You never know really where they are. They show up eventually. Always something going on Money Island. A couple houses to our left. You can see the house over there with the stone foundation. That one is called Grey Rock Island. It was built by the families themselves from 1901 to 1910. They would come out here, they'd cut stone all summer long, they'd set up a tent, building up that foundation. On the 9th year, they have a big barge to deliver all the wood to finish off the house. They've done all the cement, the stonework. And as they're unloading the wood, they realize they haven't quite gotten enough. And so they're really upset. They're not going to be able to finish their house. And the youngest son has this great idea. He's like, hey, Dad, you know what? The barge itself is made out of wood. So they end up buying the barge that delivered the wood. They buy it, they rip it apart, they take the timbers out of it. They use the timbers as the main framework, and then they finish the house on time. This house here on the left-hand side, this tan one, probably my favorite story of all the Thimbles. This island is called Mother-in-Law's Island. Yep, named after a pesky mother-in-law. It seems that there was a couple that back in the 1800s, they got married in that little chapel I had mentioned that existed over on Money Island. And they decided they want to spend their first evening alone out here on this rock. There was nothing there at the time. So they row out here after the ceremony. They bring with them some food and some wine and some bedding, and they're settling in for the most romantic evening of their young lives, their honeymoon. When they're interrupted by the splish-splash creek, splish-splash creek noise of someone rowing out to their island. It's like, who could this possibly be? Yeah, you guessed it. It's the bride's mother coming to check on them. This is such a sweet lady. Now, surprisingly, the couple invites her up on the island. They give her some food and then a lot of wine. And soon she gets a little sleepy, so they tuck her into the bedding. And the moment she shuts her eyes, the couple creeps off the island. They take her boat as well as their own boat. And they beeline for shore, leaving her stranded out there. Now, she wakes up the next day marooned, and she is screaming and yelling across the Money Island for them to come and get her. But the people of Money Island knew what she had done, and so just to teach her a lesson, they left her on the rock for the full weekend. It's been called Mother-in-Law's Island ever since. Sometimes I judge a lot of people because I look at the way the families talk to each other, and you can always see there's always somebody who's like, oh, that would totally be my mother-in-law. It's kind of fun to see. There's an island coming up our right-hand side. This one is called Pot Island. It's named after the potholes that were carved in it during the last glacial ice age. Now, in 1836, a man named Bill Bryan comes to the area, and he ends up buying the island, and he puts up the first hotel in all the thimbles, that big gray building up on the hill. Now, he's about to open up for business when he gets concerned that no one's going to come to his island because, well, after all, it's called Pot Island. Today, I think they'd have a ton of business, by the way. But back then, he doesn't really like this. He decides to do a little marketing. He takes his background knowledge. He knows that about 150 years earlier that there was a man named Captain William Kidd who had been in the area. And Captain Kidd had been accused of piracy. And he had been roaming around Long Island Sound. And as he was traveling around, he had brought his treasure with him, and he was putting it in different pockets because what he wanted to really do is get clemency from the local governor in New York City. And so he had met his lawyer. He had dropped off papers that said, hey, you know what? I was legal. I attacked the French ships. They were all French. And he just basically put those pockets of gold different places. Now, he did not come into Long Island. He did not come into the Thimble Islands at all. But the owner of that hotel, he decides to kind of play it up. He has stories written about Captain Kidd visiting this area. And he gets all those stories published in local newspapers and magazines, and the public loved it. They come out here in droves. Up to 1,000 people per weekend are delivered to the island by steamship from both Bridgeport and New Haven. Coming out here, really, yeah, they were enjoying the parties, but all of them were searching for the non-existent treasure because he made it all up. And all those stories still persist today. Unfortunately, being a school teacher, I can't, lie about it, so that's where we're at. Island to our left-hand side, this one is called Exton's Reef. Back in 1978, there's a young architect who purchased the reef. And if you look on the ramp right there, that little tiny bird that's on that ramp, he's called a kingfisher, probably one of our favorite little birds. They're very sporty and fun. So Exton's Reef is purchased by a guy back in 1978. He decides to build this platform for parties. And he really has a great time. Like 2 or 3 years later, he just starts building a house on top of that platform. He wants to extend the time he's out here. And he's almost completed with the home when he decides to go to the town of Brantford to see if he can get a building permit for it. Town of Brantford's like, you did what? When? And you decided to get a permit now? You're supposed to get the permit first. So the town of Brantford says, no, you can't build a house out there. In 1972, they had just passed what's called the Clean Waters Act, that you can't build a house unless you have a spot in your septic system. Specifically 3 feet of soil, and they have none there. So they tell him he has to tear down his house, and he doesn't want to do it. So he's looking for a way out of it. Eventually, he finds a loophole in the law. He finds out the town of Brantford had never really determined what a garden shed looked like. And so that's what he called it. He said, hey, I didn't build a house, I just simply built a garden shed. And there's nothing the town of Brantford could do. They couldn't tell him to tear it down anymore. It took 20 years, the town of Brantford set up with a garden shed. It's now a 0-bedroom house, no legal bathroom, so no legal bedroom. But the gardens, aren't they glorious? Beautiful. Island to our right-hand side, our starboard side, this one is called Horse Island. It's the largest of all the Thimble Islands. It's 10.2 acres. It is about 7.9 acres of pure, glorious poison ivy. It was purchased in 1972 by Yale University and the Peabody Museum, and they left it pretty much untouched. If you look in there, any of the red you see, that's the poison ivy now turning colors. And so, 1972 they purchased it, and they left it pretty much alone. They maintained the one mansion you can kind of see through the trees back there. All the rest of the houses, they just let either fall down, burn down, or they tore them down. And so, it's been kind of sitting there. They have been doing ecological studies, like to see what kind of plants will grow here with, ecological succession. But generally, it's kind of sad not to see it used that much. They did put up right to our stern, you can consent and see a shed. That's an outdoor education pavilion where they put up, and we're expecting it to start being used all the time. And it's only been a handful of times they've ever been out here. So now Horse Island gets its name because back in the 1800s, there was a passing freighter that got caught in a storm, and everything on the decks gets washed into the sea, including a number of horses. And horses are excellent swimmers. They nearly never drown because of their lung capacity. They're just very, very buoyant. And so they swim to this island, and they remain uncaptured for the season. And so it's been called Horse Island ever since. In fact, there's more Horse Islands in the United States than any other named island there is, because that happens so often. So if you get anything from the tour, a really, really useful piece of information is that if you're ever there happen to be horses there, grab onto the horse because they'll swim, right? Straight ahead. Oh, let's go a little closer. Straight ahead, this one is called Outer Island. It's the outermost of all the Thimble Islands. Oh yeah, we get a little waves. If you look, the tide is going out, it's going this direction, and the wind, even though it's very light, is coming this direction, which makes these really kind of weird waves. That's why you just felt those waves here for a second. Now, Outer Island is kind of a cool island. It is the only public island there is. And so this is totally free to go here. It's a federal park, specifically it's owned by the Stewart B. McKinney National Wildlife Refuge and Southern Connecticut State University. So it is a park during the summertime. They just took the float out, the dock here that they're standing there. Normally a floating dock there. And you can go here basically sunrise to sunset any day you want all summer long.
How do you get there?
To get here, so a lot of people will kayak out here. Most of the summer there's flotillas of kayakers. There's also a ferry boat that will come here and drop you off. I think it's like $18 round trip from the same dock. So the only thing is they don't have any services, so if you do ever come out here, bring your own food or water. They do, however, have just a delightful composting toilet. It's really, back in August, those hot days, it's really the highlight of the whole trip. So half the island to this right-hand side is all bird sanctuary, left-hand side is for people. Now the way this becomes public is kind of neat. The woman who owned it back in that phase of time when that family was buying up all the islands, her name was Elizabeth Hurd. And Mrs. Hurd didn't want to sell to that family. She literally just altruistically said, I don't like the fact that there's one family that's purchasing so many things. I want to make sure that there's always an island available to the public. And so that's what she does. At her passing, she wills it to the public. And so that's why it's public today. She literally forgoes tens of millions of dollars, which is kind of cool. And the rocks, you guys might notice the rocks on the outside. You got a big rock over here. These are called glacial erratics. So basically when the glacier was kind of grinding across the surface, it would pick up these big chunks of rock and toss and turn them, making them more round. And then when it melted, it would just drop those rocks wherever they were. And so these rocks were placed here about 30,000 years ago. So this is kind of the phase of the tour that I'd like to answer any questions people might have about the thimbles. Yeah.
Even Lucille Ball's house around here?
No Lucille Ball. No, we don't have anybody famous at all out here. Yeah, we used to have Gary Trudeau and Jane Pauley. Do you know who those people are? So Jane Pauley did the Today Show. Gary Trudeau still does the Dewsbury Comics. And so they lived on my island. They were on my island for 35 years. I watched the two of them get married. I hid in the bushes and watched them get married when I was like 12. So they only moved, I'd say, about 6 years ago. And Jane would do the Today Show when she was here. She would get up at 3:30 in the morning, actually 3 o'clock in the morning. By 3:30, Gary would drive her over. It was the coolest thing. They had a terrible little boat, piece of junk boat. They were not ostentatious in the slightest. And he would drive her over to shore at 3:30 in the morning. She'd be met by a limo. She would do all her research in the limo ride all the way down to New York City. She would do the Today Show, then come all the way back. She would get dropped on a side road because she didn't ever want anyone to know who she was. And then she'd wander down the dock, and sometimes we'd give her, people on her island would give her a ride out, or Gary would come in. And then Gary would stay there on the island with the kids. And the kids were basically, they were free range growing up. And so they just ran around the island, and it was perfect. Mm-hmm. So they had a very normal lifestyle. And then the reason they sold was because we had a really, really hot summer when those kids came back with their own kids. So all the grandchildren, they were all shoved into the house, and it was just brutally hot. And so, basically Gary was like, hey, you know what, we got to figure something else out because there's no electricity. And so they ended up finding a property right on the river just north of the city where they live. And so they bought that and turned that into a compound for all the family. Other questions?
There's no waves.
What's that?
There's no waves.
Today there are no waves. Exactly. We just haven't had the wind. In order to make the waves, you have to have the wind coming from the same direction for a while.
Wind or the moon.
No, and the moon.
Tidal effect.
Yeah. It's all good. It's a nice calm day. And the thing is, in October, and we've got the shelter of Long Island as well to stop those waves. In October, we generally get enough wind where it gets very, very wavy. People often want to know, like, why wouldn't you want to have electricity? That's one of those things. Like, why wouldn't you want electricity? You see there's a lot of solar panels that are starting to go in, but when we grew up, it was all kerosene lamps. But we do have refrigeration. We've had propane refrigerators since the 1940s, so I basically grew up with all refrigeration and such. But the best part of it, not having electricity, is the community that kind of develops from it. So we'll have hot nights, and we just basically all migrate to the side of the island that has the littlest breeze. We hang out on each other's porches, spend time, we have cocktails, and we play games, and we play music and stuff like that. And it's really just spending time with each other. And I think that really, if we had electricity, we'd be all inside in our air conditioning watching Netflix. This wouldn't be, so it's great. So the island to our left-hand side, this one is called High Island. It sits highest off the water. No, it has no relationship to Pot Island. Basically, the families that own this, they kind of consider themselves the real pirates of the Finland. And that big house in the end, you see looks like a pirate flag that's flying from them. I'll explain that a little later. That is actually the company that owns the island. You think, oh no, a corporation owns this too. Well, it does, but in a sort of different way. What happens is basically the island is stolen from whoever owns it back in the 1800s. The way it happens is this one couple comes out and they are looking for room at one of the hotels and there's no space. So they get a little frustrated. They roll over this island, they climb up on top, set up a tent, and have a delightful weekend as trespassers. They came back the next year, they go right to this island, they bring some friends with them. Following year, even more friends. Soon there's 7 families kind of stretching their way out over the whole island. Eventually one of the families has this moment that says, you know what, we should be legitimate about this. Why don't we find out who owns the island and then we could rent it or buy it from them? So they went to the town of Brantford to do some research. And the town of Brantford had lost the records to the island. It had a small fire. And so those 7 families banded together and they claimed the island under squatters' rights. Took them 15 years, but in 1904, they created what's called the Buccaneers Corporation. That's the corporation that owns it today. Get that whole pirate theme. And 4 of the 7 families are still here today. Now that flag that you saw, that was a cross of a sword and a musket with a big B on the top, and that was 1904 underneath it. I like to think that it predates the skull and crossbones. The Jolly Roger was invented by Hollywood back in the 1940s, and this corporation was put together in 1904. So this is Brian's wife in the little tiny boat to her right-hand side. Now, High Island does not have any running water or electricity. They rely entirely on rainwater that gets collected in their gutters that then drains down into big tanks underneath their house. And then they use that rainwater to pump back up the house to do, wash dishes, to take showers. Most importantly, they flush their toilets. They can also boil it and drink it. Kind of one of the really gross jokes out here is they say there's nothing quite like a scotch and water from High Island. You can really taste the essence of seagull in it. This island looks like we're going to hit, but we won't. This one is called West Crib, and the one that's on the right-hand side is called East Crib. We'll go between the 2 islands. Crib is a British term for dry dock. So this stone wall with a railing, and you guys can see the cormorant in the water right there. You just dove. This railing, this stone wall that comes out, that's one of the last existing cribs in the Thimble Islands.
Honk, honk!
Now, Crib, what happened is in the 1800s, this island was owned and operated by a boat building company. And so they had 7 of these cribs, these dry docks on this island. And then people would bring their boats in here at high tide, and just like now, they tie it up very tightly. And then as the tide would go out, the underneath of their boat was exposed, and the company would come out and do any work they had to. They could caulk the chimps in the planking, they could repair anything, scrape off barnacles, tar the bottom of the boat, didn't really matter. And then 12 hours later, the tide would come up and the boat would be off as good as new. So they operated here from 1855 until 1910, at which time it got very, very popular out here, and the property values skyrocketed. So it made more sense for them to sell the island off. Now, both of these islands that we're going between, they do have electricity, and they do have running water. A lot of people want to know where they get the water from. Well, the water comes to us in pipes. Look at the great blue hair and this big rock next to us. The water comes to us in pipes underneath the mud below. And you can even see the pipe that comes up from the water here to our right-hand side. It's got a gray sleeve over it protecting it from the rocks. So that's also the reason why we kind of take off here. Basically mid-October, early November. Those all have to get pumped out because otherwise they freeze and crack. I mentioned earlier Gary Trudeau and Jane Pauley. We're going to go right next to their house. I'm going to bring it. We don't normally go this way, but it's really super high tide, so we're going to go in really kind of close to this island. And it's the blue house on the end. You'll see it when we get around the corner. And you'll notice there's a separate facility. That was Gary's workshop on the right-hand side. So this island is called Governor's Island. So this is where I grew up. Now, the name governor is not from the name of a politician, but rather it comes from the name of a pig. Yeah, I know there's some similarities. We're not going to get into that today. Turns out that back in the 1800s, this island is operated by a shell fishing company who uses it as their kind of their base of operations. Now, the whole area around us, as I mentioned earlier, is full of oysters and clams and such. And so they would store a lot of equipment here. Now, unfortunately for them, when they weren't here, locals started coming out and stealing stuff off of the island and breaking things. And so the company really didn't like that. They really wanted to keep people off the island as much as possible. Ideally, they would have a guard dog. But the problem with a guard dog on an island like this, especially in the 1800s, is you have to come out and give it food and water every day. It's just not feasible. No one really ever would volunteer to come out here and do that in the middle of the winter. So they're stuck for a little bit until finally one of the guys that works for the company has this great idea. He said, you know, I've got a pig at home that's kind of mean. I think you might be able to survive out here. So they put the pig in a rowboat, they drag him out here, they let him go on the island, and the pig does great. He's able to find his own food, find his own water, and he's mean enough, people just don't come up on the island. So for 3 years, everybody was happy. They had a guard pig. Unfortunately for them, on the 4th year, the company comes out, they try to get up on the island, and the pig had gotten so mean, he would allow no one on the island at all. So, they had a big pig roast, and it's at that party they decided to rename the island in honor of the pig they were talking about. His name was Governor, hence this is Governor's Island.
That's scary.
And this is the blue house right here is what I was talking about.
Wink, wink.
So Governor's Island has 16 homes on it, and we do have running water. So we're
16,
very, very
wow.
fancy August running water and such. A couple houses of note. You can see the house all the way down to the end. Looks like a lighthouse. It's not really a lighthouse. It was just built that way because no one thought it would survive there because it's so exposed. So it's an 8-sided house. It's an octagonal house. That way, only 1/8 of your house can be hit by waves or wind at any point in time. It allows it to survive a little better. Another house that's kind of unnoticed, the white house that has the stairs that go up the front and has sort of a pyramidal shape to it. That home was not built as a house, but rather as a bandstand. And so if you've ever heard of the Yale Whippet-Moose, that was their bandstand. For 35 years, you had to come out here to the Governor's Island to watch them perform. 1969, my uncle purchased the bandstand. It hadn't been used in over a decade, and he turned it into a single-family house. And so that's where my cousins all grew up. You can see the excavator that's out there. We'll show you how that got on later on, but that's there because there was a big storm out here on July 3rd. We had a microburst that came through, and it took down 11 trees on Governor's Island. By the way, this is the second time I've gone through here in a tour, so I hope you guys feel very excited by how close we are to this island, right? This island is called Potato Island. It's named after the 5 lumps of reef that make it up to 5 potatoes. Even though you can't see it right behind these grasses, it's all a pool. The whole end of the island is just a swimming pool. Now, back in 1910, there's a man named Albert Lostrom who comes out here to the Fin Lounge, and he wants to build, because as I mentioned, it got very fancy. It was being called the Newport of Connecticut, and he wanted to be part of that. And so he's looking for property, can't find any. Eventually, he's able to buy these 5 reefs, and he encloses the 2 largest reefs in this giant stone wall. Now, getting the stone out here today would be a hassle. Back in 1910, it's really difficult. Albert came up with a great engineering solution. What he did is he waited for the winter time. And back then, the winters were much colder, and the whole area around us would freeze over. And so he took teams of oxen. Each team of oxen would drag a single stone across the ice, they'd dump on the reef, they'd go back for another trip. It took him 3 years just to get the stone out here. Then he hand builds the stone wall, back builds it, puts up 2 houses. This one here is an original, the other one on the other end washed away, and that's why we have a pool. Today, this house is for sale. You can see this rounded stone wall. It's an 8-person hot tub. It is, I think it's $4 million. My favorite part of the house is this corner section that kind of pokes out towards us, that rounded section. When I was a kid, that was my friend's bedroom upstairs, the 2nd floor. The reason I mention that is because pretty early on, we realized we could take the sashes out of her window. You could kind of jimmy them out, and you just left a big, wide open window frame. And the reason that was cool is because if you pushed her bed to the side, you could get a running start from the hallway. You'd run down the hallway through her bedroom, and then you could dive out the window in the water below. It was awesome. My mom was on a tour after, I've been doing this for about 9 years. I only tell this story once in a while. But my mom was on a tour about 3 or 4 years into it, and I happened to just mention that story. And she was sitting right over here, and she's like, no, you did not. The island to our right-hand side, this one is called Rogers Island. This is by far our fanciest island. Before 1901, it was a granite quarry. And this is where some of the pedestal stones for the Statue of Liberty came from. And then it's purchased by a man named Captain John Phelps. He was in copper. He was a copper magnate. Now, he decides to turn into an estate. He starts building this little grain White House for his workmen, so his workmen can be here as much as possible to complete the 27-room Tudor mansion you can see coming into view in a second.
Wow.
Now, the mansion was gorgeous, but the grounds were even more spectacular back then. They boasted a whole host of amenities, including a 4-hole golf course, a bocce court, a croquet field, tennis courts. They had formal gardens, informal gardens, and then surrounding the entire island, they had what's called a bridle path. So when you arrived at the pier as a backside, you were always greeted by these 2 little prancing ponies. They would take you in a carriage wherever you wanted to on the island. Just idyllic. So this was part of the Gilded Age. Now, this island was purchased by that family that bought 10 islands. This was their last island they purchased, and they do an amazing job of renovating it. And you might have noticed the greenhouses there that are up behind this White House. You couldn't see those before that storm that I was telling you on July 3rd. They lost 44 trees on this island, by the way. That greenhouse is there because that family that bought all the islands up, they really love palm trees. And every time they bought an island, they'd have these 2 potted palm trees, giant, enormous pots that would be right at the top of the dock. And unfortunately for them, palm trees don't winter over real well. So for the first 8 years this is going on, they would airlift those palm trees into a greenhouse inshore every single fall. And they didn't really like doing that, so it was fairly expensive. So when they buy this island, they put up those 2 greenhouses just for the palm trees. But despite all that, they do an amazing job. They renovate this island. All the stone walls you see, you can see the formal gardens. They just do an amazing job. They hire a historical architect to research and play look like in a payday, and then try to recreate all the aspects. They didn't get the 4-hole golf course. They got a 2-hole pitch and putt designed by Jack Nicklaus here, but pretty much everything else is original. This end section where you see the ornamental grasses, that's a big pool complex. That's why the stone looks a little different. But they do a really amazing job, and they have sold it off. Now it gets sold to this other person who now has put it in the market again, so it is for sale. The government has an extra $30 million this year. It's for 3 months out of the year. The funny part about this is, so Captain Phelps owns this island back basically from 1901 until he passes away in the late 1940s. And in his will, he gives this island to his daughter Rose, who is a socialite from New York City. And Rose didn't like the island. She in fact hated it because, well, it didn't have running water and it didn't have electricity. And so she, being from New York City, used to having all these, accoutrements. She's very much like, this is terrible. So she would go to her fancy parties and complain about owning it. Finally, a young man at one of her parties says, listen, Rose, you hate it so much, why don't you just sell it? She said, well, I would sell it, I just have no idea what it's worth. So that young man, he did a nice thing. What he did is he sat down and he figured out what he thought the island might be worth with her over a couple cocktails. And based on the acreage and the size of the house, he buys the island from her without ever seeing it. What a risk. For $67,000. Now he comes out in the springtime and he is blown away by the property. He can't believe what a deal he's got. But he gets his biggest surprise when he opens up the door of the house, finds the whole place chock full of antiques and artwork. He owns this island for 3 years, and during that time he just empties all the contents out of the home, auctions it off, and is said to more than triple his investment on the island just in the contents of the home. And he sells the island, now empty, for $1.2 million. Not a bad investment. But you guys see how this is all kind of barren here? This was all treed before in the beginning of summer. See if we have anybody here who likes reality TV shows. All right, we got a couple hands. All right. Now, this is the follow-up question that almost no one ever does. Has anyone heard of the reality TV show Love Prison? Yeah, we've had 3 people all season that have done this. One of them was a producer on the show, and they barely knew it. So what it did is it took place on this island to our left-hand side, this blue island that has the house. It's not a blue island. The island that has the blue house, the yellow trim. That was the site of where we had our very own reality TV show. Basically what it was, the premise was you had people that had never met in real life. They only had an online relationship. They meet in real life for the first time in this house. They're dropped off, and there's cameras in every single room, and then you watch as they meet, and they either fall in love or kill each other over a matter of a week. Just a hot mess. It was terrible. The only reason we liked it was, first of all, it was shot here, and we could see when the ferry boat captains would bring them over. We were like, all right, which ferry boat captain is it today? So that was the only part that I was excited about. It was an awful. It only lasted 1 season on, was it 80? Yeah. Brian knows it very well. He's a groupie. He's one of the 3 people that really love the show. This on to our right-hand side, this one's called the Cedar Island. Used to have a home on it, gets washed away in the 30-year hurricane. Now, a guy in the 1980s realizes that the family that owned it never rebuilt it, obviously, but they never even paid the back taxes. So he pays the back taxes that are owed on it, just a couple $1,000s, and then he owns the island. He can't put up a house because of the Clean Waters Act of 1972.
Hey, Flint Gold.
He puts the dock on the island, goes out and buys a big houseboat, a double-decker. He ties that houseboat up to the dock, lives in the houseboat, uses the island as his front yard for 17 years, eventually getting a gazebo built. He did that eventually about 5 years ago. He sold this island off to 3 families from Pine Orchard, which is the neighborhood behind us. They all have 20-something-year-old kids, and so almost everybody now refers to this island just simply as Beer Pong Island, because that's all that ever happens. Beer pong tables. I said earlier, I showed you where that granite came from and how things get on and off. These are the barges that allow us to get big things on and off the island. The poles that look like telephone poles, those are actually anchors. So you use a push boat to push the barge wherever you want it to go. And then when you get up close to the island, you drop the pole. This goes into the mud, and the barge will sit there on it, goes up and down into the tide. Do a really nice job out here. Last 2 islands on the end of our tour. Oh, it's making me sad. The end of our tour, the end of my season. You got that one that has a house on it. It's called Jepson Island, and the island is just a pile of rubble, and there's a bunch of seagulls on it. That's called Frisbee Island. Now, Frisbee Island used to have a home on it, and it was owned by the Frisbee family, and they own the Frisbee Pie Company in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Now, Frisbee Pie Company, they had a contract with Yale University, and they provided all their pies. They did very, very well, and people loved the pies, especially in Yale. And the Yaleys, they did something fun. They found that the pie tins, after they ate the pie, they clean out the tins, they flip them over, and they whip them at each other. It was a great game. Their goal was to hit each other in the head. That's what boys do, girls do, that's fun. So they, an executive from Whammo sees this one time when he's visiting Yale, and he makes a prototype out of plastic. Calls it the Pluto platter. We were in the middle of the space race in the 1950s. And he markets it. Doesn't do very well. But when he goes back and he changes it to the Frisbee, the company sells like hotcakes. Just amazing. Sold over 30 million copies. All right, on our right-hand side, you can see way off in the distance, you'll see a guy that's on a motorized hydrofoil. So what he's doing is he's got a hydrofoil underwater, and in his hand he has the control for how fast he wants to go. Oh.
Where?
Thank you, Bill.
Oh, I see him.
Well, thank you guys very much for coming aboard. It's been a pleasure to have you all. It's great to share this moment with you. Do me a favor, please stay seated until we get to the dock itself. Brian will make sure that we're securely fastened, and at that point we can kind of take care of things. So if you do, if you were a walk-on and you owe us money, if you can just kind of wait to the side, we'll collect it from you. Either one of us will collect it from you, and then we'll take care of that. And once again, thanks so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed your time.
Woo! Blow the horn!
George, we owe them money, right? We owe them money, right?
All right, everyone.
Oh, you on Twitch or something?
Yeah.
Hey everyone.
Say bye, Frosty.
Hi guys. I say hi. Hey everyone. Having fun here.
Yeah. Say bye, Frosty. And Blaze. Bye. Alright, see you later, everyone. Oh. Also, my nice dragon t-shirt. You see, oh, you're right there. Alright, I'll see you all later.